Good morning, everyone. My name is Peter Rinch. I'm the CEO of Hollyhock, and we're really excited to welcome you to week 2 of Sheltering in Community. Over the past few weeks, so much has changed for so many people in the world, including us here at Hollyhock. And in times of crisis like this, there's really a tendency in all of us, and we feel it here too, to turn inwards, to try to protect what's ours, to hunker down, to shutter up and to try to weather the storm. But in our more enlightened moments, we reject this. And we choose optimism, we choose generosity, and we choose community. And so we're so excited to welcome Mahan Carrington, our vice chair of our board, good friend and mentor, and Robert Beatty for the second week of Sheltering in Community. Thank you.
Thanks, Peter. So I think I can see a number of you. How many people were here last week that joined us last week? Put your hand up. There we go. Great, welcome back, and welcome to those of you that are new. I'm Karen Mahan Carrington, and I will be our host today. And before we get started, I want to introduce Loretta. Loretta works in programming here at Hollyhock and marketing, and is going to just give us a basic talk in Zoom etiquette for those of us that are still learning our way. I know I am.
Great, thanks, Karen. So this will be a double up of last week's spiel, but no harm in hearing it again. There's a little mute button in your bottom left corner. You should all be muted at the moment. This helps with the airspace so that we're not hearing extra sound. But if you do want to speak, then you can unmute yourself before you speak, and then we just ask that you keep yourself muted if you're not speaking. And then in your top right corner, it'll either say speaker view or gallery view. You can switch between these two views to see either the main person who is speaking or a gallery of everybody who's in the room. And in gallery view, there's tabs on the left and right side of the page, and you can flip through. We actually have about 5 pages worth of people right now. If you're having some issues with lag time, sometimes it can be helpful to turn your video off, which you can do next to the mute button in the bottom left corner. Of course, if you can keep it on, it's always nice to have that visual contact. And then in the bottom middle, there's a chat button, and I'll just get everyone to click on that right now. And you can see it says to everybody. So if I write hello, everyone, you should see that in the chat. And then under that too, you can also privately message someone. So I've named myself Hollyhock Loretta. Ling, who is also with Hollyhock, is named Hollyhock-Ling. And if you're having any tech issues or you need any support, you can message either of us privately at any time during the call, and we'll be there to support you. And then sparkle fingers. So if you're resonating with something or you want to show support for something someone is speaking, you can give us sparkle fingers. This is American Sign Language for applause. It's a great way to show your support without having to unmute yourself. And then if you're having a lot of tech issues, like you can't hear what's going on and there's a lot of lag, you can put a cross over your screen, and that's a nice visual cue. I am hearing a few people right now, so just make sure that you are on mute. And then one other thing is we are recording this session. At some point we're going to go into breakout rooms, which will be smaller groups for discussion. Those will not be recorded, so they're confidential. And if you have any issues with this beginning part being recorded and you don't want yourself on screen, just send me a message and let me know.
Great, thank you, Loretta. So I'm here today in the Hollyhock fireplace room. It's a rainy, wet day in the Pacific Northwest, and the lodge here at Hollyhock is empty, other than Peter's upstairs working in his office, and of course our staff are all working from home and doing their part to shelter in place while we get to be together on the Zoom Sheltering in Community. So it's lovely to be looking out at the ocean and sitting on the deck and seeing some familiar faces that I've been able to have tea with at other times in the past in the deck. And here we all are having a sort of virtual morning tea together. This morning, we are joined by Robert Beatty, who is in a tent in his backyard in Portland. Some of you will know Robert as the founder of the Portland Insight Meditation Center. Robert is one of those gifted teachers that was one of the generation that really brought Buddhism into everyday life for those of us living in North America and European contexts. And has been a joy and inspiration to me. I met Robert 25 years ago, and I was a political activist at the time, and Robert told me that he spent every morning doing a meditation first on His Holiness the Dalai Lama, on who he had on one side of his chair, and then turning and doing a meditation on Ronald Reagan, who he had on the other side of his chair. And that I was very inspired by that, and I've remembered it all these years, and it really was a beginning for me of how do we integrate the inner and the outer work, and how do we really meet the politics and the challenges of community life with our intentions to really come from a place of love and compassion. So welcome, Robert. I'll just let people know what the agenda is. The agenda is that Robert and I are gonna be in conversation for a little while. I have some questions, and I imagine you all might have some questions. So if you have a question that you would like me to ask Robert, please put it in the chat, and I'll do my best to see if there's sort of threads emerging that we might want to discuss together. Then Robert is gonna lead us in a guided meditation. And then we're going to have some time in small groups just to check in and process that. And that will be our time together. So without further ado, welcome, Robert.
Hello. Oh, probably won't hear them. There's ducks passing behind me here. I'm in my tent, and hello, I recognize some familiar faces. Nice to see you folks from my retreats and my life. I'm in the tent as a bow to marital survival. I'm broadcast every morning to the in this exact way through Zoom to the Portland Insight Meditation community and anybody else that joins us. And oddly enough, it became irritating to my wife Jennifer that I was using the dining room table. We have a rather small house, and so I tried first a little shed. We have an earthquake preparedness shed in the backyard, and so I was secure. I had all the food and stuff with me, but it was very tiny. And then I thought of the tent, and it's wonderful. So I get to be out here in nature. You may well hear crows or airplanes or other things. So I'm delighted to be here. I love Hollyhock. I've been going there to teach at least 25 years, a little bit more than that. I think I missed 1 year, and it's always seemed like an enormous privilege to teach there. If there are places on the planet where healing truly happens, that's one.
Mm.
You know, when people talk about Lourdes and they did this pilgrimage here or there, Hollyhock is a place worthy of pilgrimage. The miracles of healing that I've witnessed there are mind-boggling. So there.
Great. So I'd like to start us off, Robert, with a small question. Like, I mean, this is such an extraordinary moment. Most of us have never lived through anything like this. So I think the main question is, what do you think that this moment is asking of us?
I think it's the same question that every moment asks us, which is, how loving can you be? I actually I was looking at poems this morning, and there was one that popped in that is a very favorite of mine. Where is it here? Here it is. It's Rumi, 12th century, Becoming Human. Once a man came to me and spoke for hours about his great visions of God he felt he was having. He asked me for confirmation, saying, "Are these wondrous dreams true?" I replied, "How many goats do you have?" He looked surprised and said, "I'm speaking of sublime visions and you ask about goats?" I spoke again, saying, "Yes, brother, how many wives how many do you have?" "Well, Hafiz, I have 62. "How many wives?" Again, he looked surprised, and then he said, 4. "How many rose bushes in your garden? How many children? Are your parents still alive? Do you feed the birds in the winter?" To all of these he answered. Then I said, "You asked me if I thought your visions were true. I would say they were if they make you become more human, more kind to every creature and plant that you know." So I think this time is asking that of us. How kind can we be with ourselves? How kind can I be with the fear? I have a daughter who works in the hospital. She's a nurse, and I feel a little teary when I think of her just now. She's on the front lines, and I'm very much in touch with the PIMC community, and we're of course we haven't had a member that I know get sick yet, but we've had one person have her mother pass away just the other day, not related to COVID, but so how loving can we be with whatever's happening in ourselves, and also with our loved ones, the people we're cooped up with, and if we do go into the news, how loving can we be to every actor in the news, including the ones that our personality has been trained to hate? And how much love can we bring to this very difficult and dire time for humans?
Do you think there's also an aspect of slowing down that can offer us some healing?
Oh, I think so. This is a little bit like a meditation retreat in terms of there are some of our distractions and activities that we can't pursue. And so we can turn inward more and really ask ourselves, what's happening? What's the gift to me in this? What's the silver lining? And there are many, actually.
I do feel like stepping out of the busyness of our lives. I mean, it seems to me we have become rather crazed over these past few decades, living these frantic lives of activity and consumption, and that this pause, I already have talked to a number of friends that have said, you know what, I'm just done flying now. I realized that I didn't need to be flying. I'm not going to ever fly for entertainment again. And while as a climate activist, I've been trying to get people to say that for a decade, now people are just coming to it on their own, because I think we're feeling into this kind of rootedness in place and this slowness, and realizing that this is really all we ever needed.
Right. We started playing board games. We bought some dominoes, and we've been playing Mexican Train with my 18-year-old stepdaughter and my 15-year-old stepson. We are having so much fun, and they never had time. For the last few years, they haven't had time for us. They're always out with their friends. Well, now they're cooped up at home with us, and we're having some challenging times to learn from. But gin rummy, I'm new to that, and we're really having a good time. So it's important. And right. I have sometimes a little bit more slack in my schedule, and I'm getting more time to sit, and I love that.
And you're going to share one of those meditation with us later.
I will.
And what about, of course, one of the central teachings is around uncertainty and being comfortable with uncertainty. And there's, so much uncertainty now. Every day changes. You know,
Yeah.
it's going to last a month. Is this going to last 2 months? Is this going to last longer until there's a vaccine? I mean, it's
Yeah.
a massive experiment in learning and to live with uncertainty. And of course, that's a practice that you have been teaching us about for some years. Can you talk about how that relates to this moment?
I quote the Buddha. Thus should you look upon this changing world. All component things are impermanent. All component things are subject to dissolution. See all of this world as a star at dawn, a bubble in a stream, a flash of lightning in a summer cloud, a flickering lamp, a phantom, and a dream. One of the central threads of the teaching of the Buddha is to develop a mind, develop a consciousness, which is capable of seeing reality. And in reality, nothing lasts. All relationships end in separation or death. Civilizations come and go, pandemics come and go, earthquakes come and go, planets come and go. One afternoon there were the dinosaurs munching away, and bam, in came the asteroid, and it was all over. The plume of molten rock, they say, went a third of the way to the moon. And as it fell down, the earth was rotating. It burned all of India. And this is not, in a way, this is an unusual time for us. And people around the planet have been having unusual times like this all the time. The locusts in Saudi Arabia and that part of the world recently, the crop's gone. So we've been sheltered in a way through wealth a lot, but there's no sheltering from this, and so we're faced with the truth of impermanence and suffering in a way that we often can avoid. So it actually is in a way a very opportune moment that, well, the distractions aren't going to work completely in this. So how do we rise to the occasion, and how do we use this for our awakening? That's a question for me.
That we're all living into. So there's a few people asking questions in the chat. Let me bring those into the room. One is around how do we want to stay informed. It's our responsibility to stay informed. The understanding of this disease is changing all the time. I know my friend, Dr. Charles Steinberg, who I think is on the call, has been saying when people ask medical questions, he's been saying, well, it's called the novel coronavirus for a reason. It's new, and therefore we don't know. And so when someone asks a question about, whether you're immune if you've had it, or, how likely is the fever, the answers are we really don't know yet. And so the knowledge base is evolving seemingly daily now. So the question is, how do we keep ourselves informed and still not lose ourselves in all the information? How do we decide how much news we want to take in versus to try and keep ourselves a bit sheltered from that?
Well, I work pretty hard at titrating my dose, and it really doesn't take long. Well, I have a feed from the Centers for Disease Control, and that really is everything I need, in fact. But when I get caught up in the addiction of the news, I'm doing it as a distraction. It's almost like smoking marijuana, or
not quite as fun as that, I don't think.
I suppose that's true. Or getting drunk, or working all the time, or one's phone that we can get in there. And then there was a time a few years ago when I would I would stay up at night and I would watch the news, and then I'd check what the Germans were saying about this, and then I'd check what the Russian press had, and then I'd look at Al Jazeera, and 2 or 3 hours would go by, and it was completely like eating cotton candy. And that was with an intention to be an unconscious intention to be unconscious. And so, how much is enough? Probably not. It doesn't take much to know what our how to behave in our culture at this time.
So what I hear you saying is maybe choose a suggestion would be to choose one source and check in with that source a couple of times a day, like the CDC or something like that.
And here's you see my bias here. I subscribe to the New York Times online, and I tend to believe what they say, and they're pretty much. I also listen to the Daily, which is there's a podcast they do each day, the Daily with Jacob Barbaro. That's really interesting because it's really getting beneath the surface into talking with a nurse from one of the hospitals. Yesterday's one was the race for the for what's it called, the immunization. What's happening in that, and who would have thunk it? Donald Trump and his crowd tried to buy the company in Germany that may be the leader in this. They offered them $1 billion. I didn't know. That's very. I mean that too. How does that help me? I don't know, but it's interesting to me.
Indeed. Okay, so that's and then different people are. I mean, there's different. Whatever is the source that you most trust, I suppose, is a suggestion.
Yeah.
And then I had a question about something Peter said at the beginning, and something I've been watching a lot is the kind of tendency that the tendency that we have in this moment to revert to a kind of defensive individualism, that when things are going well and we feel safe, it's much easier to be open-hearted and feel connected. But when we feel it's our very survival, there's a kind of a, this is my, this is my little turf that I have to stay in and protect, and I'm protecting it. And, and so can you recommend how we can really use this as a practice moment to live through that difficulty?
I think of us as polarities. There is one pole in which we are the universe, and there's another pole in which we've taken birth as these separate persons. And the separate persons, we survived as a species because we had strong fight-flight responses, because we have it's very easy to drum up in us fear of the other and hatred of the other. And that's at the end of the spectrum where there's I, me, mine. I, me, mine, I, me, mine. The song of the self, I, me, mine, I, me, mine. Myself, my loved one, my family. And gun sales have gone through the roof here in the States again. And ammunition sales are even crazier. And that's the I, me, mine. The other polarity, which is why I think it really behooves us to train spiritually in preparation for such times as this, is where it's not I, me, mine, it's us. And then if we have the capacity to soften and open to the fear and realize, oh, look at that. Here's my tendency to want to hoard. How natural. And I'm going to use my thinking capacity to realize I don't need 5,000 rolls of toilet paper. I'd be all right if I had only 1,000. So the essence of the spiritual training is always, I think, moving into love and compassion, which arise from insight into the interconnectedness of things. But untrained, and this we see, it's so sad, and it's happening all around the world. these strong men are arising, and they're firing up people's fear, and then we're getting, you know, more walls and more borders and more xenophobia. So for those of us that have the gift and the capacity to open, how fortunate. But I think it's an intentional thing to some degree, and for those of us that have been practicing for a while in some form or another, it becomes kind of natural. That makes sense to you, Karen?
Totally. Yeah, very much so.
Yeah.
And I think now is an excellent time to really practice, to watch it, to notice, look and notice, I would say.
Well, let me say one more thing.
Yeah.
With my beloved daughter, with whom I'm very close, the days when she's going off to work, I'm more invested in getting some masks. There's one person in our community who's manufacturing masks and getting them out and asking for donations from the community so she can give them freely to the healthcare workers. But because of my daughter being involved, I have more sensitivity to it, and that's natural too, of course.
I heard a story this morning on the news about a woman who's a nurse that had planned to move, and the apartment she was moving into, the woman is an older woman who's immune compromised. And when she realized the woman was a nurse, she said she didn't want her to move in, and gave her refunded her money, and felt terrible about it. But now this nurse has nowhere to live because she's given up her previous place and isn't being allowed to move into her new place, and has gone to 4 or 5 places, and no one will rent her a place because she's a nurse.
Yep.
Yes. It's understandable on all sides, but talk about the creation of separation, and super difficult.
Well, and the politics of being a nurse here in the States is also very complicated. If my daughter were to quit now, she would lose her nursing license. So they've got them, all the laws and all the union contracts are void, and they can put them wherever they want. They can have them have as many patients as they want. And if you quit, you'll never be a nurse again.
And that way it is somewhat like wartime, isn't it?
Yeah.
Which does lead me to some of the other questions in the chat, just around suffering. Of course, we know the kind of some of the Buddhist teachings around suffering, and that this is, you've mentioned earlier, this is a moment in which we are confronted with the inescapable truth of the suffering in life. But what would you say to people who are just having really difficulty with that and feeling scared? I would say that, for myself, I've been doing this check-in of head, heart, and hara. And they're very different answers I get when I check in those 3 places. But when I check in my sort of deep belly, I have some real fear, and I think I'm not alone. So what could you say to us about dealing with suffering and fear at this time?
I guess I will, a piece of the guided meditation I want to do has to do with fear. But I think in a way these times are illuminating the fear that is at the root of the separate self all the time anyway. That we're really quite remarkable in our capacity to compartmentalize and forget that we're going to die. And so we go through our lives with our distractions, and the distractions are ultimately all disappointing. Nothing isn't ultimately disappointing, because even the most wonderful, beautiful, exquisite times that we have, they always pass. This is core Buddhist teaching. And so we have a sort of a golden opportunity here. This circumstance is breaking past our compartmentalization and our defenses. And we're noticing, oh, there's fear here. So what shall I do with this fear that is natural for we're walking around in time bombs, and they're so vulnerable. We have an undefended belly, and we drive around in tin boxes at 60 or 70 or 80 miles an hour, and we should be afraid because they're lethal. But we're very well compartmentalized. So this is breaking through to that, and that's part of the gift of this time, which is to realize we're afraid. And this reminded me of another poem I think I'll try to share with you. Maybe I'll do it now. Whoops, it's a poem that I wrote. Jennifer, my wife, and I went to New Orleans to the Blues Festival. A couple of years ago. She went to college there, and she took me to see her places, and it was lovely. I came home 4 days before her, and I left her. We got in a taxi at our B&B. I took her to the big hotel where her friend was staying, and then I left. Oh, we got out of the taxi, had a kiss, and I went to the airport. On the plane, I went back to the restroom, and on the way back to my seat, this occurred to me. People sleep, watch videos, play games on screens, and sip at wine. We hurtle west over snow-covered mountains. A chasm opened, or perhaps just revealed itself, with a taxi goodbye kiss. That moment of looking away one plane change ago, it's always the same. Here, and then not here. It's that simple. Those moments that we actually have when we can touch, hear, see, and smell one another are all we really have. The stakes are high, aren't they? Either we connect and love one another now or not at all.
Mm.
So every time we part, actually we have some people don't understand it sometimes, but we don't say goodbye, honey, have a good day. We actually say goodbye, don't get dead. Because that's what all that, drive carefully, etc. It's always, if something happened to you, I'd be crushed. So we just lay it out there on the table, and it's weird, I know, but you can get, with 45 years of meditation, you get pretty weird.
Thank heavens for that. Well, I think that's the perfect segue then for you to help us all get a little weirder by offering us this guided meditation.
Well, before we go there, I want to share something with you. Somebody sent me this yesterday, and it's just too funny. I'm going to hold it up and see if you can see it. It's a big, like a marmot or something like that in the mountains. Oh, hang on. Day 5.
Can people hear it? It's the marmot screaming. I know that it's the power of humor. I always like to laugh, but I've been so, there is a lot of humor out there, and I've been so touched by it. I know that Ling from Hollyhock and I are big fans of Pluto, the dog. If anyone's seen Pluto, if you just Google Pluto living or on Facebook or on YouTube, it's dog and he's telling you about COVID from the dog's perspective, and it's one of the highlights of my day.
Lovely.
Yes. Anyway, on to meditation.
Life without a sense of humor just isn't very funny, and it's pretty important for us, I think. Okay, so do we still have half an hour? Does that fit our?
Yeah, it fits perfectly. Okay. So we're going to just remind people that we're going to do this meditation with Robert, and then we'll come back and we'll do a brief section in small groups.
Okay. I'm going to take a moment to just scroll through the different screens here and see you. Look at you. Martha. How lovely. So many of you I don't know. How wonderful to meet you, though, for a brief moment like this. Wow. Hooray for this technology. It really is a beautiful thing. All right, back to here. Please take a moment to look around your surroundings. And the Buddha who was an ordinary human being, he wasn't some divine incarnation. He was just like us. And he went through some losses in it. His mother died in childbirth. He had this original trauma. And then, anyway, he set off on his quest, and then something happened to him. He woke up and he realized that he knew how to help people get there. And so the entire Buddhist teachings are about helping people have the same experience the Buddha had, which is to awaken from the trance of the separate self. To awaken and realize, even if for a second, oh, life and death are perfectly safe. There's nothing to lose because there's nothing to hold on to. There's nothing to have. So I invite you to look around your environment and to cultivate gratitude. Look at the privilege you're living with. Warm, comfortable, pretty memories on the wall, perhaps. Light. Probably nearby you have a warm, cozy bed you get to go to. So this, just to cultivate, oh, and you're fairly healthy because you're sitting in a chair right now, or you're sitting up. So this is a wonderful way to begin. Every day, practice. And then to think a kind thought for yourself. Maybe an easy way to do this is to think of someone who you really love, who loves you, maybe a mentor. Maybe it's a pet, but someplace where your heart opens easily and you feel connected. This is called loving kindness practice. And it's not magic and it's not forceful. It's just conjure up, oh yeah, there's that person. I could think of my children. Or my beloved 14-year-old dog who's been with me through thousands of hours sitting with clients and students. And so a few moments of love, including this person who sits here as you. And we can add words to it. May I be happy. May I be free from fear and danger. May I remember my true great nature. Or simply the great mantra, I love you, with your name at the end. I love you with your name. And if that's hard to do, that's very important information. That means that more practice is really needed every day. Something you can do that they do commonly in Thailand is every night before you go to bed, use your journal. Ooh, there's someone's mic that's open. See if you could all mute your mics. It's a little disturbing, I think. Write down 2 or 3 kind things that you did during the day, or 2 or 3 things you're grateful for. The idea of this is that it overcomes our self-hatred and self-criticism, so that in the moment, as we're dying, our reflection is, oh, I've been such a good person in my life. I've done so much good. Because chances are you have. And now, the miracle of life is happening right now here. Notice that you have a body. There is a body, and it's nothing but life. Notice that your hands are alive. Your feet are alive. And incidentally, if you're taking notes, it's fine with me, but you don't really need to. This is really about an experience, and there's dozens of meditations on the portlandinsight.org website that I'll connect you with at the end. Feel the life in that place in the universe that you think of as my hands, your hands. Isn't that remarkable? It's alive. And then your face. And we are dwellers. We live at the bottom of an ocean of air. Behind me, around me, the Douglas firs and the maple trees are producing oxygen, and my lungs hunger for that. Every cell in my body. And so we live in intimate physical interconnection with all of the green beings on the earth. And since the moment of your birth and until the moment of your last breath, your body's breathing. So why not come home? Why not land in your body and notice that it's breathing? And there's something else miraculous happening here that is inexplicable, but undeniable. In addition to the sensations of breathing, there is awareness of them. How do you do that? Nobody knows. That's truly the great mystery. Where does this consciousness come from? One of the things the Buddha discovered was that we can actually cultivate the capacity of being conscious of being conscious. Now, each breath has a beginning when it comes out of nowhere. And then it expands to fullness, and then it disappears. It declines and then disappears. So this communion with life that is the breath can provide a marvelous home base for the rest of your life. To connect awareness with sensations. To actually be here in this moment. And you don't need to control the breath. And if you discover that you are controlling the breath, then just put it aside for a little while and become aware of sounds. Notice how sounds come into being and then disappear. There are many strategies. You can count the breaths, breathing in 1, breathing out 2, up to 10, start over. You could notice the rising and falling of your chest and abdomen with rising, rising, falling, falling. Or you could add a mantra on the in-breath, may I be happy. On the out-breath, may all beings be happy. Or whatever you'd like. And so we bring a warm-hearted, kind, compassionate awareness to the fact of breathing. It's probable that your experience is also inclusive of thoughts. Thoughts of the past, thoughts of the future, which quickly sometimes convert into worries. The single greatest misunderstanding people have about meditation is that you have to stop the thoughts, or you have to be in bliss somehow. Just give that up. And instead, make your aspiration to be, I want to be awake to and accept whatever happens. So when thoughts arise and you awaken to them, hold them very kindly, very lovingly, and then return to breathing. No war. There is no place for coercion or war in this practice. So this is an exercise or a training. Come home to life in the present moment, now, with the breath. We spoke before about fear, and the same is true for all other emotions. These are natural to us. They're motivators for us. They're part of how we have survived down through all these actually millions of years with the proto-hominids and then us. So let's say there's fear. You notice it. Do you notice it as a feeling in the body or as thoughts, perhaps? If an emotion becomes predominant, you can put aside the breath and take the emotion, take the symptoms of the emotion as your meditation object. Fear. Well, there's this feeling in the solar plexus. It's not so much commenting on it, it is actually letting yourself dive into it, letting yourself feel it. Even letting yourself get swept away in it. And then you wake up and you realize, oh, that's fear. Those are the thoughts of fear. And so over time, we become less and less afraid of fear, or rage, or desire, liking or disliking. But let's come back now to breathing in and breathing out mindfully. Noticing how each breath really does have a beginning, a lifetime, and then an ending. inevitably, we fall into trances. The trance of the past. The trance of wanting or not wanting. The trance of emotions. These are all part of our personality, the somebody training we've been through in our lifetime has conditioned us in certain ways, habits. Some of them are skillful and pleasant, and some are unskillful and unpleasant. But ultimately, they're not personal. They're no more personal than the weather. And so we rest kindly, lovingly in the present moment as we awaken, and then we return again to the generous ongoingness of breathing in and breathing out. I had for almost 42 years a teacher named Ruth Dennison who passed away 4 years ago. She had a lovely piece of guidance. She would say, "Darling, rest in the beauty of your being." So we rest in the beauty of that which we are. Notice how this body breathes. Notice how thoughts come and go. Mm. 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 I'm going to finish this time of meditation, this is mindfulness practice, with a teaching from the Buddha, which is the most powerful antidote to fear, because it brings to mind and helps us work our way through that which we fear the most. And we do it with consciousness and love. And please reflect with these with me, I am of the nature to age. I am of the nature to age. I have not gone beyond aging. Is this true? I am of the nature to sicken. Sickness is not a mistake. normal. I am of the nature to sicken. Is this true? Is this really true? I am of the nature to die. I am of the nature to die. Is this true? Could this really be true? All that is mine, beloved and pleasing, everyone that I love, will become separated from me. Is this true? Is this really true? I am the owner of my karma. I am the owner of my intentional actions. I'm the heir to my karma, born of my karma. I abide supported by my karma. Whatever karma I shall do, of this I shall be the heir. Thus should we daily recollect, said the Buddha. Awareness and a living body. Notice how it breathes. Notice where it's warm and cool. Please now allow awareness to awaken in the face, and in the cheeks, and in the eyes. And form the intention to roll your eyes around a little bit inside their beautifully lubricated sockets. Notice the will that's involved in this. And then another step, which is to intentionally prepare to pull up the eyelids. And then as you pull them up, notice what happens. Seeing happens. It's a miracle. Objects appear. And now just to finish this, in a little while, we'll be talking and so on, but after that, you'll stand up and then you'll go about your life. Why not be mindful when you drive? Why not be mindful when you chop carrots? Why not be present when you step into the shower? Because that's being present in life. And then the fantasies of past and future become more and more obvious that they're fantasies. They're not real. What's real is now. And when I'm really now, then I can actually sense what's happening around me, where I can be effective, where I can become more loving and compassionate. So thank you for participating in that with me. And I'm going to put away the guitar and take off my coat. The sun is out, and you know how tents are. They heat up fast. So back to you, Karen.
Thank you, Robert. That was lovely. And when I opened my eyes, I mentioned earlier I'm sitting in the fireplace room at Hollyhock. When I opened my eyes, I looked down to the beach and there was a person coming out of the water.
Wow, how cool.
It's a cold, gray day, and he just emerged from the water and didn't run for a towel, didn't do anything, just
wow.
Looked at the ocean. So that was, I feel like we all got to do that in some small way through that meditation. So thank you. What we want to do now is invite people to go into some small groups of 3. So people are just coming back in. I think we're about half of us have come back into the main room here. And while the final groups are just wrapping up and about to rejoin us, would anyone like to unmute and share something about how that was for you?
Well, it was so simple and yet so beautiful and helpful. Yeah, really, I really appreciated this opportunity. Thank you.
Yes, I'd like to echo that. It was really nice just to have a little interaction, little dialogue with people, and hear how things are going for them.
Wonderful.
Hi,
Thank you.
I want to say that we're all coming from different cities and regions and different age groups, but it seems there's a lot of commonality that we share. So when we really open up and express something, it's like, yeah, I get it. I'm doing that too. Or so it's reassuring. It's like you think you're kind of on your own on this, but it's nice to share and know that other people are feeling and experiencing and doing similar as well. So just want to share that with you.
Mm-hmm.
I love getting the different perspectives from everyone else, because it seems like we all have experiences and each person sees it a different way. To me, it reminded me, like, if anyone goes to church and breaking the bread, kind of like I'll get one view, and then they brought in other views for me. So I really appreciated that.
Wonderful. Well, I think that we're mostly back now. I don't see Robert. Robert, are you back?
Oh, hang on. I'm here and I'm visible to me.
There you are. I see you now.
Okay, good.
Right. So we're just wanting to wrap up. I think most people heard that, little bits of feedback around how nice it is to discover the commonality in our experience. And while there are differences in the specifics and the circumstances and the locations, there is something fundamentally familiar to that we are all going through in this time. And that the opportunity for real connection that creates is really lovely. And yeah, to offer gratitude to this technology. It's quite something to be alive at this time in so many ways. Well, just to remind you of what's coming up in this series. So Hollyhock is offering this every Thursday morning at 8:30. This is our second week. Next week, we'll be joined by Farah Nasralli, who is the founder of Smiling Yogi. She is an amazing teacher and yogi, and is doing a workshop here in the fall at Hollyhock. We're still hoping that and planning that we will have a fall season, and if it is safe, of course, we'll be thrilled to see you all here on the deck at some time later in this year. Farah's workshop is called Peace, Poetry, and Prayer, and that's in September. So she's joining us next week at 8:30 at the same Zoom channel, same bat time, same bat channel. And the following week, which would be April 16th, Gabor Mate is going to join us. Gabor is a based doctor and mindfulness teacher who's done a lot of work on addiction and other challenges of modern life. So Gabor will be joining us. You will get an email where you can register for these courses. We need you to register for each Zoom individually. Again, they're all free. It's just so that we can track how many people we have in each one. So you'll get an email in the next few days that lets you register for either of those. And feel free to invite your friends, to send the email on to others that in your networks that might want to participate in a space like this. And a couple of other offerings. One, again, hoping that we're open. I do a workshop here at Hollyhock called Climate Hope. This year it'll be in August 12th to 17th. Very much about how do we bring our spiritual and emotional resilience to these times of uncertainty. And Robert has a workshop here in September, a 5-night mindfulness workshop. So maybe with those PSAs out of the way, Robert, I will turn it over to you to close us out and tell us how else we might connect with you and the work that you're doing.
Okay. We have about 3 or 4 minutes, right? We're down to the wire. Yeah. Okay. So a poem written at Hollyhock by someone called Patty Bruce, one of my students, 10/19/03, called Broken Rock. You stood guardian beside these waters for centuries. No one knows how long. One day you were rent in two. Was it the relentless waves that broke you, or was it the loon feather fallen on your fracture that finally opened you to more sky than you ever imagined possible? So when we're done with the next thing, I'm going to see if I can put on the screen. Basically, it's a link to the Portland Insight Meditation Center, which is portlandinsight.org, portlandinsight.org. And we have tons of things happening online. I teach every morning at 7 o'clock. I'm on here in my tent, and every night of the week. And there's tons of guided meditations. It's a website that's been growing in richness for years. There's 300 hours of YouTube, but the guided meditations in particular, people find very helpful. So I wanna. This is not how I thought I would end, but I'll do it this way because I love it. In Islam, there's 101 beautiful names of God. And Islamic prayer often starts with Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. We begin in the name of Allah, whose names are compassion and beauty. There's 99 more. And there's one that I always end retreats with, which is called Ya Fatah. That's the words, Ya Fatah. And the words mean, may the path of your heart open before you. And it's not a namby-pamby Buddhist quiet meditation. It's you get your feet to the floor, and then you fill your hands with all the energy in your heart that you have to spare, and then you cast it over the world, and we're all pointing in different directions. So in fact, we are going to cast this over everyone on the planet. And the word is Ya Fatah, and we'll do it 3 times. All right, taking a deep breath. Ya Fatah!
Ya Fatah!
Ya Fatah!
Ya Fatah!
Ya Fatah! Thank you. May all beings share in the merits of our practice. And I hope to see you on a retreat sometime. And let me see if I can get this share to work. Is it there? Oh, look at that. I think I did it. Thank you, dear Hollyhock friends, for hosting this. And may we all be safe. Wash your hands.
You can chat to us in the chat box at any time, and our wonderful coordinator, who's Kyla, who's the voice you heard earlier, will be able to take all of your questions too.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Robert, that was fabulous. Everyone. Bye.
Beauty of your being.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Martha.
Pay attention.
Thank you.
See you next week,
Thank
Ling. Can't wait to see you, Ling.
Yes, see you then. Wonderful to see you.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
No, it's not. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Loretta, in particular, for running it well.
Yeah, that was so beautiful. Woohoo! Love
Good
the
to see
tent.
you, Phil.
Could hear all those birds in the tent.
Thank you.
So grateful.
Lovely.
Woohoo! I'm still here, yay! I hope you can see the grateful, everybody.
It's backwards.
Backwards.
I'll put it the other way. Sorry. Is that better?
Way.
Yeah,
That's
great.
better. I can read
So
it.
for me, it looked like it was forward, so I didn't know. There you go. Is that better? Well,
Yeah,
good
that's
feedback.
perfect.
Look at Paul laughing. Okay, Paul. Good, good. I'm laughing.
You got me laughing.
Oh,
Thank you.
goodness. So I love this. I picked this up at Value Village about a year ago. Isn't that funny? And it's a piece of wood. It's fantastic. So now I know to go this way. Woo! grateful. So happy. Bye, Loretta. Bye, Karen. I love that you're in the fireplace. I actually played my flute in there with one of your people who works in the kitchen, you know. Oh, he was there in the summer. And it was so great. And it was transformational to be at Hollyhock for me. I was there I was for Laura Branscome's workshop in the summer. That's why I'm still alive. Yay.
Goodbye, everyone.
Goodbye, everybody.
Thank
Bye,
you all.
Winnie.
Thank you.
Keep smiling.
Bye, Paul.
Hi.
Bye. I can feel I'm going. I'm melting. I'm melting.